In the backseat of a limo, Phil Spector leaned in to Lana Clarkson. Hours later, she was gone, and Spector was holding the gun. Long before that night, he was one of the most powerful names in music. He was born in New York City in 1939. He grew up in the Bronx. As a teenager, he moved to Los Angeles. At 18, he co-founded the Teddy Bears. He wrote their hit song, "To Know Him Is to Love Him." Later, he developed the wall of sound style at Phillies Records. He layered instruments and voices to create rich pops. He produced hits for the Ronettes, the Crystals, the Righteous Brothers, John Lennon, and Leonard Cohen. By the 1960s, he was one of the top music producers in the country. Even with this success, Spector became more withdrawn and unpredictable. In 1974, he was arrested after a car crash that left him with serious head injuries. He had been married to singer Ronnie Spector from 1968 to 1974. She later spoke of emotional mistreatment and being kept at home against her will. In the early hours of February 3, 2003, 40-year-old Lana Clarkson worked as a hostess at the House of Blues in West Hollywood. She met Spector that night. They rode together in his limo to his Pyrenees Castle mansion in Alhambra, California. About an hour later, his driver heard a gunshot. Spector came out holding a revolver. He told the driver, "I think I harmed someone fatally." When police arrived, they found Clarkson slumped in a foyer chair. She had a single gunshot wound to the mouth. Teeth fragments lay on the floor. A .38 caliber Colt Cobra revolver sat nearby. Forensic experts noted the bullet's downward path did not match someone harming themselves. Prosecutors said Spector had been drinking. They argued he became aggressive when Clarkson refused his unwanted advances and tried to leave. They said he staged the scene to look like self-harm. They pointed out he wiped the gun with a diaper. Spector claimed Clarkson had waved the gun and harmed herself by accident. He even told officers he did not know where she got it. To challenge his story, prosecutors called several women who said he had once aimed a gun at them after they said no. They used this pattern to show he meant to cause harm. His first trial began in March 2007. The courtroom was broadcast live across Los Angeles. Witnesses included his chauffeur, forensic doctors, and 4 women who had earlier felt threatened. After 5 months of testimony and a 15-day jury debate, the vote was 10-2 in favor of guilt. Because it was not unanimous, the judge declared a mistrial in September 2007. Defense lawyer Linda Kenny Baden argued the case relied on his fame and shaky forensic evidence. She called the women's accounts hearsay from people influenced by fame and substances. Prosecutors replied that Spector never dialed 911 or asked for help. They said he tried to cover up what he had done, showing his consciousness of guilt. A second trial opened in October 2008 without cameras. Prosecutors refined their evidence. Police showed a thumb latch on the floor, proving Clarkson could not leave freely. They displayed Spector's dinner jacket with Clarkson's red spatters. They explained how he tried to clean up with a red-soaked diaper. Jurors saw trajectory data, red stain patterns, and locked door proof. They also heard about his sense of power and what happened when Clarkson said no. On April 13, 2009, they found him guilty of causing intentional harm resulting in loss of life and of unlawful use of a firearm. On May 29, 2009, Judge Paul Fidler gave him the maximum sentence, 19 years to life in California State Prison. He also ordered Spector to pay Clarkson's mother for funeral and other costs. Spector appealed in 2011, 2012, and 2016. All appeals failed. He remained in prison, and his health worsened. By 2014, doctors said he could not speak because of vocal cord disease. On January 16, 2021, at age 81, he passed away from complications related to COVID-19 in a prison hospital near Stockton, California. Up next is a lifeless wife, a child watching, a Hollywood actor at the center. "I shot my wife," actor Michael Jace told the 911 operator. Before that night, he was best known for playing a police officer on TV. Michael Andrew Jace was born in 1962 in Paterson, New Jersey. He stood 6 feet tall and had an athletic build. From 1992 until 2014, he worked steadily as an actor. He appeared in films such as Forrest Gump, Boogie Nights, and the 2001 Planet of the Apes. He also made guest appearances on TV shows like Law & Order, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Southland. His best-known role came as Officer Julian Lowe on FX's The Shield. He was on that show for all 7 seasons. Off-camera, Jace was a husband and a father of 3. His wife, April, was 40 years old and worked as a financial aid counselor at Biola University. They had been married for 9 years when April's life ended in a tragic incident. Michael grew up in New Jersey but moved to California to pursue acting. In Los Angeles, he met April. They built a home together and raised 2 young sons plus a teenage stepson. On the surface, their life looked stable. Behind closed doors, they faced marital and money troubles. Suspicion and worry lingered in their home. On the evening of May 19, 2014, at their Hyde Park house in South Los Angeles, Michael called 911. He said, "I shot my wife." Officers arrived to find April with a severe gunshot wound that led to her passing. Michael stayed at the scene. The next day, he was taken into custody on suspicion of wrongdoing. According to prosecutors, Michael used a revolver that belonged to April's father. He fired once, into her back. He then shot her twice in the legs as their son watched. Their child later told investigators that Michael said, "If you like running, then run to heaven," before the second shot. In a recorded statement, Michael said he first planned to harm himself. When he couldn't go through with that, he aimed the gun at April instead. He said he meant only to hurt her out of anger. He was upset by their failing marriage. April had asked for a divorce. He suspected she had been unfaithful, but no proof was found. Prosecutors said Michael acted out of anger over April's decision to end their marriage. He claimed she had been unfaithful, though investigators found nothing to support that. His defense argued the shooting was unplanned and happened in a moment of heated emotion. The jury disagreed. Michael told detectives that money stress and the end of his marriage weighed on him. He admitted he first intended to harm himself. When he lost the will to do that, he turned the gun on April. He insisted he never wanted her to pass away, only to hurt her. After his arrest on May 20th, 2014, the district attorney formally charged him on May 22nd. At trial, the prosecution described him as an actor who turned controlling and waited in ambush. A jury of 6 men and 6 women took less than 3 hours to reach their decision. They found him guilty of second-degree homicide with personal use of a firearm. On May 31st, 2016, the jury returned its verdict. Michael was guilty on the homicide count and the firearm enhancement. He was sentenced on June 10th, 2016. Before the judge and April's family, he said, "There is no justification for what I did that night. I am deeply sorry for the pain I have caused. I want her family to know this was not planned." The courtroom was full of emotion. April's mother left in tears. A family was left shattered. The judge gave Michael 40 years to life in prison, 15 years to life for the homicide, plus a 25-year enhancement for using a gun. He was sent to Corcoran State Prison to begin his term. Now 62, Michael Jace will be eligible for parole in the 2050 S, if he lives long enough behind bars. In one moment, the next individual was an artist on stage. The next, a teenager's life was taken. Before a 16-year-old fan collapsed from a gunshot wound in a packed nightclub, Corey Miller was one of Southern hip-hop's rising names. Corey Miller was born in 1971 in New Orleans, Louisiana. He grew up in the Calliope housing projects in the 3rd Ward. His siblings include Master P, Percy Miller, Silk the Shocker, Vishon Miller, and his late brother Kevin. Living in a tough neighborhood shaped their early years. After high school, Corey joined the U.S. Army as a combat medic. He served during the Gulf War. In the mid-1990s, he became famous through No Limit Records. His albums Life or Death, 1998, and Bossalini, 1999, were big successes. In the early hours of January 12, 2002, around 1:30 a.m., there was a chaotic scene at the Platinum Club in Harvey, Louisiana. Inside, a 16-year-old fan named Steve Thomas was hurt in a crowd and then shot in the chest. Corey Miller was performing at that moment. Some people said Miller pushed into the group surrounding Steve. Moments later, a shot rang out. Steve fell, and despite quick medical care, he passed away. Soon after, 2 club employees, Darnell Jordan, a security guard, and his brother Kenneth, said they saw Miller standing over Steve and firing the weapon. Their statements became a key issue in the trial. Miller was arrested on January 18, 2002, after Darnell and Kenneth picked him out of a photo lineup. Prosecutors said Miller was upset by the beating and stepped in with a gun to defend his friends and his reputation. Miller disagreed. He said he was near the DJ booth when he heard the shot. Then someone pushed him outside. He told detectives he had nothing to do with the shooting. On February 28, 2002, a grand jury charged him with second-degree homicide. His first trial ended in a guilty verdict. But the judge ordered a new trial. Prosecutors had failed to share some background information on key witnesses. The retrial began on August 5, 2009. In court, jurors heard detailed accounts of the fight. Darnell said he saw Miller with a weapon flash after Steve was already under attack. Kenneth also said he saw Miller pull the trigger. The defense called other clubgoers. They said Miller was not part of the fight and could not have been seen clearly. They suggested the flash came from someone else in the crowd. On August the 10th, 2009, the jury voted 10-2 that Miller was guilty again. 3 hours later, they confirmed that decision. On August 14th, the judge gave Miller a mandatory life sentence with no chance of release. One juror later said 2 others were pressured into changing their votes. One became so ill under pressure that they agreed with the majority just to end the process. Years later, Darnell and Kenneth both said they had been pressured by authorities to identify Miller. They asked to take back their earlier statements. But multiple courts, including a federal judge in 2023, found those recantations not believable. All appeals failed to overturn the conviction. In December 2011, the Louisiana Fifth Circuit upheld the verdict. In February 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court denied review. A request for a new trial was refused in 2019. In November 2023, federal judge Sarah S. Vance again upheld the conviction. Miller remains in prison for life. In May 2017, a court ordered him to pay $1.4 million to Steve Thomas's family. That included $500,000 to each parent, $150,000 for their suffering and funeral expenses. The next rapper claimed it was just music, but the FBI called it a confession. Ronald Herron was born in 1982 in Brooklyn, New York. He grew up in the Gowanus House's public housing. His mother raised him on her own. When he was 12, he saw police officers fatally wound a friend. That event stayed with him. At 14, he was arrested for a theft involving a weapon. He spent 4 years locked up on Rikers Island. When he got out, Herron took charge of a group called the murderous Mad Dogs. They operated in Borum Hill, Gowanus, and Wyckoff Gardens. They ran the local trade in illegal substances. They forced people to pay money for protection. They stole from people with weapons. They also carried out paid acts of homicide. In 2002, he was charged with first-degree homicide for the June 2001 incident that left dealer Frederick Brooks fatally wounded. The case ended without a conviction. Some said witnesses were pressured into silence. Later, Herron admitted to trafficking in illegal substances. He then served 6 years in Southport Prison. When he got out in July 2007, Herron began a rap career under the name Raw Diggs. He joined a group called the Murda Team and worked with artists like Uncle Murda and Waka Flocka Flame. Songs such as We Run NY and Slow Down Remix became popular. By 2010, his track Eulogy had over 1 million views online. People wondered if he was truly an artist, or if there was something darker behind the music. That question became the focus of his court case. In Wyckoff Gardens, Herron and his associates met Richard Russo in an elevator. They argued. Then someone pulled out a gun and Russo was fatally wounded. Later, Herron chased a rival dealer named Victor Zapata across a courtyard. He used a gun again. Zapata was fatally wounded. On October 5, 2010, police arrested Herron outside a nightclub. They found illegal substances, a gun, and protective gear in his car. A federal grand jury charged him on 21 counts. These included 3 homicides, several attempts to harm others, a plan to harm people, trafficking in illegal substances, racketeering, and running an illegal organization. His trial began in May 2014 in New York. Prosecutors called more than 50 witnesses. They showed Herron's rap lyrics and videos and argued they described real events. His lawyers said the music was just art. They said it could not be used as proof. On June 26, 2014, the jury found Herron guilty on every charge. This included racketeering, homicides, trafficking, illegal substances, gun offenses, attempted homicides, and conspiracy to harm people. On April 2, 2015, Herron faced sentencing. The judge compared the hearing to a funeral. U.S. District Judge Nicholas Garofis gave him 12 life terms plus 105 years. The judge said the community would no longer have to fear his brutal behavior. Before the judge spoke, Herron addressed the court himself. He said media and prosecutors made him out to be evil. He asked what they had done for his neighborhood. Then he said he would only face it once. He added that multiple life terms did not scare him. Since then, Herron has spent most of his time alone in prison. He first stayed at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Brooklyn. Then he went to the ADX Florence Supermax in Colorado. In 2022, he spent some time at USP Florence High. By March 2025, he was back in ADX Florence. Herron appealed in April 2015. He argued that using his music broke his freedom of speech. In February 2019, a higher court rejected his appeal and said the music was valid evidence. The next TV personality stood to gain $450,000, but only if his nephew didn't survive. But before we move on to the next case, consider subscribing for more important stories like these. Tim Norman was the son of soul food restaurateur Robbie Montgomery. She first found fame as an Niket and later starred in the TV series Welcome to Sweetie Pies. That show ran from 2011 to 2018 in St. Louis and often featured Norman alongside his nephew, Andre Montgomery Jr. In his early 20s, Andre moved from Texas to St. Louis. Norman promised to teach him how to be a man. He got Andre a job at the family restaurant. He also helped him enroll in a local music school. Behind the friendly scenes, Norman and insurance agent Wael Wally Yadnam were making false life coverage applications for Andre in 2014. Andre never knew about them. They lied about his income, health, work, and family background. In the end, they secured a $500,000 policy on him. By early 2016, the plan was clear. Norman paid exotic dancer Tarika Tanisha Ellis $10,000. She was to find Andre's location and share it with a hired individual, Travel Anthony Hill. Hill carried a .380 caliber handgun. On March 14, 2016, on Natural Bridge Avenue in St. Louis, he caused the loss of Andre's life. He was paid $5,000 for that act. Norman was arrested in August 2020. His trial opened on September 6, 2022. Over 7 days, prosecutors laid out evidence of the false applications, secret burner phone texts, and bank transfers. All three co-conspirators, Ellis, Hill, and Yagnam, had already admitted their roles. Hill even testified that Norman met him the day of the act. A woman then called with Andre's location. At 8:02 p.m., Hill ended Andre's life. Norman stood to collect $450,000 from the policy. He planned to receive that money only if Andre's life ended. Andre had no idea. On September 16, 2022, a federal jury found Norman guilty of plotting a hired end-of-life scheme and fraud. U.S. District Judge John A. Ross sentenced him on March 2, 2023. He imposed 2 life-in-prison terms plus 20 years, calling it a ruthless, carefully planned ending of your nephew's life. In July 2024, the appeals court upheld those convictions. It ruled there was no error in how the trial handled witness statements or co-defendants' rights. At sentencing, prosecutors noted that Norman showed one face to viewers but hid much darker plans. After the verdict, Norman posted on Instagram, still claiming he was innocent. "I'm still in disbelief. The feds know 100% I did not do those coverage forms, but the jury didn't get to hear that." The next individual was a rising actor. Then he filmed a confession with his mother's body in the background. Ryan Grantham was once a rising Canadian actor. He was born in 1997. In 2010, he appeared in Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Later, he had roles on TV shows like Riverdale, Supernatural, and iZombie. His early work gave him a reputation as a promising young talent. He grew up in Squamish, a small coastal town outside Vancouver. His mother, Barbara Waite, faced cancer. He lived at home with her and his sister, Lisa. Family members described them as close. They struggled under the weight of Barbara's illness. Colleagues remembered Ryan as polite and reserved, but he battled deep feelings of despair. On March 31, 2020, everything changed. He took a handgun and went into his home while his mother played the piano. He fired at her from behind. She had no chance to defend herself. Lisa found the scene the next day. In court, she said she was vulnerable and Ryan gave her no chance to defend herself. But what he did went even further. Investigators later found a kit in his car. It held 3 guns, ammunition, and a dozen Molotov cocktails. He planned to harm Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He also thought about harming people at a local university. Psychiatric experts found he suffered from severe clinical depression. He felt overwhelming guilt and self-loathing. He believed, wrongly, that causing his mother's demise would spare her from the horror of what he planned next. He rehearsed his actions. He recorded a confession video. His mother's body was visible in that recording. In June 2022, he admitted guilt to second-degree homicide. In Canada, that carries a life sentence. At his hearing in British Columbia Supreme Court, the judge weighed his mental health issues against the severity of his plans. Prosecutors asked that he wait 17 to 18 years before seeking parole. His defense urged 12 years. The judge set a 14-year wait before parole eligibility. She acknowledged that he surrendered rather than acting on his other intentions. At the hearing, his sister Lisa spoke of her fear. She said her brother was a dangerous person and worried about public safety if he were ever released. In court, he addressed the judge directly. He said, "I cannot explain or justify my actions. I have no excuse. It hurts me to think about how badly I've wasted my life. But from every fiber of my being, I am sorry." Those are his last recorded words in open court. They showed remorse, yet few believe words can undo what happened. The verdict was guilty of second-degree homicide. The sentence is life in prison with no parole for 14 years. He also faces a lifetime ban on owning firearms. He is now in a medium-security psychiatric facility, receiving treatment and working on writing and self-reflection. The next actor tracked the victim for weeks, then walked up and fired 11 times. Isaiah Stokes came from modest beginnings. He was born in New York City in the early 1980s. Over time, he built a steady but low-profile career in entertainment. By the mid-2000s, he had small roles on shows such as Law & Order, SVU, Boardwalk Empire, Blue Bloods, Power, and The Mysteries of Laura. These parts were minor but visible. Off-screen, he tried his hand at music under the name $Aiya. He kept his personal life mostly private. Very little is known about his family or upbringing. His legal troubles began with a fatal incident in 2021. Before that, there was no record of any serious offense. In October 2020, Stokes went to a birthday party for a man named Tyrone Jones, who was 37. Jones asked him to leave when he behaved inappropriately toward some guests. A brief scuffle followed, and Stokes was kicked out of the party. That moment seems to have sparked a deep grudge. Over the next few months, Stokes appeared to plan revenge. Late in January 2021, he slipped a tracking device under Jones's vehicle. Security cameras later showed that device in place. On February 7th, 2021, around 2:30 p.m., Jones sat alone in his parked Jeep Grand Cherokee near Linden Boulevard in St. Albans. He was waiting for a friend to join him for lunch. Stokes, driving a rented SUV, used the tracker to find Jones. He drove around the block for about 15 minutes. Then he got out, stood by the driver's side window, and fired 11 rounds at point-blank range. Jones was hit several times in the head and chest. He passed away at the scene. What was Stokes thinking during those slow, deliberate moments? Did he believe this would settle his anger? Within hours, investigators traced the rented SUV back to Stokes. They also linked the tracking device to his apartment in Rego Park. In July 2021, detectives arrested him at home. They found documents that tied him directly to the tracker. His court case started on February 13, 2025. It lasted 2 weeks. Prosecutors showed security videos, brought in witnesses, and shared forensic proof that he planned the act in advance. On March 7, 2025, a jury found him guilty of second-degree unlawful taking of life and 2 counts of illegal handling of a weapon. The evidence showed he had plotted the event and acted out of revenge. On March 21, 2025, Justice Kenneth Holder gave him a 25 years to life term. During the sentencing, Jones's father spoke through tears. He called Stokes a monster and said nothing could undo his son's loss. The judge cut off Stokes' own remarks, saying, "You're not a lawyer, and frankly, you don't know what you're talking about," before denying any leniency. The next actor vanished from Hollywood. Now we know why. Joseph Hyungmin's son was born in Gwangju, South Korea, on November 20, 1970. He moved to the U.S. as a child. He trained in martial arts, then took roles as an actor and mixed martial artist. You might know him as Random Task, the odd job-style villain in Austin Powers. International Man of Mystery, 1997. He fought in early MMA and UFC events, but did not win many matches. His on-screen persona hid a troubled private life. In May 2008, Sun broke his roommate's car door with a kick. He admitted the act. A judge gave him probation and a short jail term. As part of his sentence, he had to submit a DNA sample. That sample would connect him to an old, chilling incident. In October 2008, lab results matched his DNA to what happened on Christmas Eve in 1990. That night, Sun and another person forced a 19-year-old woman into a car. They hit her with a gun. They made her endure unwanted acts. They threatened to end her life. They even counted bullets and pretended they would carry out their threat. Then they left her naked and blindfolded. She survived. Prosecutors said the 1990 event was not random. They called it a planned act meant to frighten and control her. They pointed out what was said. "It's Christmas. This is your lucky day," as she pleaded for help. By then, too much time had passed to charge him for the forced acts or for taking her against her will. Instead, they charged him with planning to cause severe pain and harm. Those charges do not expire. In August 2011, Sun went on trial in Orange County. The court picked jurors carefully. Prosecutors let the survivor speak and showed the DNA link. On September 19, 2011, the jury found him guilty of 1 count of causing severe pain. The judge gave him 7 years to life in prison. A few weeks into his term, prison staff found his cellmate, Michael Graham, lying unconscious with serious injuries. Medical staff said Graham did not survive those injuries. Officials moved Sun to isolation. They later accused him of taking Graham's life. In 2017, a jury found him guilty of voluntary manslaughter. That added 27 years to his sentence. Now he must serve at least 34 years before he can ask for release. Some people noted that his old fighting style did not excuse these acts. One comment online asked why someone with his past was placed in a cell with another person at risk. Son is now 54. He will not be free until he is at least 80. Up next is a real estate heir, a missing wife, and a hot mic that changed everything. Robert Allen Durst was born in 1943 in New York City. He grew up in Scarsdale, New York. His father, Seymour Durst, was a well-known real estate developer. His mother was Bernice Hurstein. His grandfather had come from another country to work as a tailor. In 1927, that grandfather started the Durst organization. Robert had 3 younger siblings, Douglas, Tommy, and Wendy. When Robert was 7, his mother took her own life. This loss stayed with him and led to early mental health checks that suggested schizophrenia. Even though he had money and privilege, his childhood was marked by both tragedy and ongoing mental struggles. In 1965, he graduated from Lehigh University with a bachelor's degree. Later, he went to UCLA. There, he met Susan Berman, whose father was involved in Las Vegas. They became lifelong friends. In April 1973, at age 30, Robert married Kathleen McCormack, who was 20 and studying medicine. They moved to Vermont and opened a health food store together. Over the years, their relationship broke down, amid reports of physical mistreatment. Kathleen went to a doctor for bruises, and neighbors spoke of angry outbursts by Robert. On January 31, 1982, Robert said he had dropped Kathleen at a New York train station. A few days later, he told police she was missing. No one ever found her. For decades, people wondered what happened to her. Some evidence pointed to her being forcibly harmed, but Robert always denied any part in her disappearance. On December 23, 2000, Susan Berman was found in her home in Beverly Hills with a gunshot wound at the back of her head. Nothing valuable was taken. Prosecutors later said Susan knew about Kathleen's case and might reveal what she knew. They argued Robert saw her as a threat and struck to keep her quiet. Robert then moved to Galveston, Texas. He pretended to be a quiet, mute woman. In 2001, he shot his 71-year-old neighbor, Morris Black, saying he acted in self-defense. Afterward, he dismembered the body and dumped it into Galveston Bay. In 2003, a Texas jury believed his self-defense claim and acquitted him. In 2015, HBO released The Jinx, the life and passings of Robert Durst. During filming, Robert was accidentally recorded in a bathroom still wearing his mic. He muttered, "There it is, you're caught. What the hell did I do? I took their lives, of course." Those words gave prosecutors fresh reasons to reopen the cases. Just before the final episode aired, police arrested him in New Orleans on weapons charges. He was soon sent to Los Angeles for charges related to Susan Berman's passing. His trial began in March of 2020 in Los Angeles. COVID-19 caused a 14-month break before it picked up again in 2021. Prosecutors said Susan was silenced to protect Robert from facing questions about his wife's disappearance. They showed a typed letter sent to police that pointed them to Susan's body. The spelling matched Robert's own handwriting, even the capital letters in cadaver. On September 17, 2021, a jury found him responsible for Susan Berman's passing and sentenced him to life, without any chance of release. For many, this verdict brought some relief. But Kathleen's disappearance stayed unresolved. Robert never stood trial for Kathleen's case. Although authorities filed charges after Susan's verdict, Robert passed away before those proceedings began. He suffered from fluid on the brain, esophageal cancer, back issues, and complications from a virus. On January 10, 2022, he passed away in the medical ward of San Joaquin General Hospital in Stockton, California, at age 78. Because his appeal was still pending, the conviction was formally set aside. This meant there was never a final, unchangeable judgment. The next man went from NFL star to suspect in 3 cold cases. Anthony Wayne Smith was born in 1967 in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. His family didn't have much. They later moved to Los Angeles. He showed real talent in football. That skill earned him a scholarship at the University of Arizona. In 1990, the Los Angeles Raiders picked him 11th overall in the NFL draft. He stood 6'3" and weighed 265 pounds. In his rookie year, he tore ligaments. He worked hard to come back. Soon he had seasons with double-digit sacks, a big contract extension, and fans dreaming of a long, dominating career. Off the field, Smith wrestled with anger and paranoia. In both 1996 and 1997, he disappeared from the team without warning. His teammates worried. There were reports of concerning behavior off the field. In 2003, he was charged with firebombing a Santa Monica furniture store after a business dispute. The jury couldn't agree twice, so the charges were dropped. But many felt that was a warning sign. In March 2011, Smith was arrested for the 2008 case of mechanic Murillo Ponce. Prosecutors said Smith lured Ponce to a deserted road near Antelope Valley. They say he beat Ponce and fired at him after a business deal fell through. The first trial ended when the jury couldn't reach a decision. In July 2012, authorities added more charges. They accused Smith of orchestrating a 1999 incident involving brothers Ricky and Kevin Nettles. He was also charged in connection with the 2001 disappearance of Dennis Henderson, whose body was later found. Cold case detectives had reopened these cases in 2011 and gathered new evidence. On November 10, 1999, Ricky and Kevin Nettles closed their car wash in South Los Angeles. Witnesses say a man in a police-style jacket, badge, and gun, later identified as Smith, told them they needed to come along for questions. Ricky asked, "What's happening?" The man replied, "We're taking him for a check." They drove off. The next day, both brothers' bodies were found about 8 miles apart. Their cheeks bore U-shaped burn marks. Ricky had burns on his abdomen and feet. They'd been wrapped tightly and shot with a 9mm weapon. Those injuries pointed to extreme suffering. Fast forward to June 24, 2001. Dennis Henderson vanished in Marina del Rey. His body turned up in a rental car in Mar Vista. He had dozens of non-fatal puncture wounds and a deep cut across his throat. Prosecutors said Smith had trapped Henderson and ended his life. At trial, prosecutors painted a picture of rage and a twisted thirst for control. Defense attorneys argued there was no DNA or weapon linking Smith to the acts. They called him a scapegoat. The jury couldn't reach a unanimous decision on the Ponce case, with a 9-3 split. The jury held Smith accountable for the 3 earlier incidents, noting the presence of extreme harm, coercion, and more than one individual involved. The trial spanned several weeks. Jury deliberations took 8 days. Witnesses matched rope and zip ties to materials found in Smith's home. Books about how to harm or take people against their will were among his belongings. In the courtroom, the big questions were, had Smith really taken these lives? Could a former NFL star be so cold and ruthless? In November 2015, the jury decided that yes, he had. They convicted him on 3 counts. The special factors, unlawful restraint, extreme cruelty, and multiple victims were upheld. The Ponce case remained unresolved. On January 22, 2016, Judge Mitchell handed down 3 back-to-back prison terms without any chance of release. Any new trial for the Ponce case would happen later. And so ended Anthony Wayne Smith's career, fortune, and fleeting fame. The next millionaire's girlfriend had a secret lover and a secret plan. Eric Naposki used to play professional football as a linebacker. He was born in New York City and grew up near Tuckahoe, New York. He played college ball at UConn. By his late 20s, he had brief stints with the New England Patriots, the Colts, and a World League team. He stood about 6 feet 2 inches tall and weighed around 230 pounds. Teammates and coaches often noticed his quick temper. Some people later linked that temper to the events that followed. After football, he worked as a nightclub bouncer. He also trained clients as a personal coach. In 1994, he was living in California. There, he began a secret relationship with Nanette Johnston. She also went by the names Packard, or McNeil. At that time, she was seeing a wealthy investor named Bill McLaughlin. Public details about Naposki's family are limited. What we know is that he has 2 children. He was engaged after his football days ended. He supported himself with security work and client training. Nanette handled McLaughlin's finances. She portrayed herself as a single mom seeking stability. Then she introduced Naposki into McLaughlin's world. Before December 1994, Naposki had no known record of disturbing acts. Then something changed. On December 15, 1994, McLaughlin was found in his Newport Beach kitchen. He had been shot 9 times with a 9mm handgun. He lost his life almost instantly. For years, no one was arrested. In 2009, a detective reopened the cold file. That led to charges against Naposki and Nanette. A neighbor named Suzanne Kogar spoke to investigators. She said Naposki once complained about McLaughlin entering Nanette's bedroom late at night. Months after the shooting, she recalled, Naposki hinted someone else might have done it. Prosecutors said Nanette told Naposki that McLaughlin was harming her. They argued she pushed him to take action. They found a 9mm Beretta in Naposki's possession. Ballistics tests showed it matched the weapon used that night. Phone records placed him near the scene soon before the shooting. Why did they act? Money and secrecy were the main reasons. McLaughlin's policy was worth over $1 million, plus a $150,000 cash reserve. Nanette stood to gain that if McLaughlin passed away. Prosecutors said Naposki joined the plan, tempted by promises of expensive trips, gifts, and marriage. At trial, Naposki said he never went into McLaughlin's home. He claimed an alibi, a phone call from a Denny's in Santa Ana at 8:52 p.m., just before McLaughlin was shot. He did admit lying to police at first. He refused to discuss his link to Nanette. When arrested, he joked, "If I wasn't there, I couldn't have done it even if I had a bazooka." The prosecution brought in 28 witnesses. They showed over 240 pieces of evidence. They focused on his lies and his link to the handgun. The jury spent more than 3 weeks on the case. In July 2011, they found him guilty of first-degree homicide with special financial gain circumstances. At age 44, Naposki faced the maximum penalty. In August 2012, the judge gave him life in prison without the chance of parole. Nanette was convicted in January 2012. In May that year, she also received life without parole. Today, Naposki is held at Avenal State Prison in California. He continues to say he is innocent. He has appealed the verdict. In September 2014, the California Court of Appeal denied his appeal. He remains behind bars, maintains his version of events, and writes letters insisting someone else is responsible. Up next are 2 trials, 3 victims. One NFL player who lost it all. Aaron Joseph Hernandez was born on November 6, 1989, in Bristol, Connecticut. His father, Dennis Hernandez, had Puerto Rican roots. His mother, Terry Valentine, had Italian roots. As a child, he faced physical harm from his father. He also experienced unwanted intimate encounters early in life. In 2006, his father passed away, and his family life fractured further. Those events left deep emotional wounds. He joined the Bristol Central High School football team. There, he set multiple state records. He then played for the University of Florida. In 2009, his team won the BCS National Championship. That same year, he earned All-American honors. In 2010, the New England Patriots picked him in the 4th round, 113th overall. He quickly became a leading tight end. He shared the field with Rob Gronkowski and rose to stardom. Odin Lloyd was a semi-pro football player, dating the sister of Hernandez's fiancée. On June 17, 2013, Lloyd was found with a gunshot wound near Hernandez's home in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. He was no longer alive when discovered. 9 days later, Hernandez was arrested. Prosecutors said Hernandez fired the shot to keep Lloyd from talking. They suggested jealousy and fear about their connection played a role. No clear motive was ever proven. In May 2014, Hernandez faced charges for a 2012 drive-by incident in Boston that left Daniel de Abreu and Safiro Furtado no longer alive. Prosecutors claimed he acted after being bumped in a nightclub. His trial began on January 9, 2015. The state presented ballistics evidence, surveillance footage, and cell phone records linking him to the scene. His defense team argued he had no clear reason to be there and that he was elsewhere when the shots were fired. Closing statements took place on April 7th. On April 15th, the jury convicted him on first-degree charges for causing loss of life, along with 5 counts related to illegal weapons possession. He received a lifelong prison term at Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center. On February 14, 2017, Hernandez stood trial for the nightclub incident in Boston. Prosecutors said he grew angry and fired shots from his car. His defense team raised doubts about eyewitness accounts and motive. On April 14th, the jury cleared him on both counts in that case. Despite facing a life term and ongoing appeals, Hernandez remained outwardly hopeful. In a recorded phone call, he said, "I'm great, man. One step closer. Light at the end of the tunnel." He spoke about appealing the Lloyd case and even discussed the possibility of returning to football. 5 days after his acquittal in the second trial, on April 19, 2017, Hernandez took his own life in his cell. He left 3 handwritten notes. One was for his fiancée, Shayana. Another was for his daughter, Aviel. The third was for his lawyer. In his note to Shayana, he wrote, "Shay, you have always been my soulmate. I want you to live your life and know I'm always with you. This was the Almighty's plan. You're rich." In his note to Aviel, he said, "Never fear me, but love me with all of you. I'll see you all in the heavens, awaiting you all with the same love." Those messages showed calm, faith, and deep affection. After his passing, researchers at Boston University examined his brain. They found severe stage 3 chronic traumatic encephalopathy. This condition can cause aggression, poor impulse control, memory issues, and mood swings. It may have influenced his behavior and downward spiral. Because he passed away before his appeal concluded, Massachusetts law initially wiped away his conviction in the Lloyd case. In March of 2019, the state's highest court changed that rule and restored his original conviction permanently. The next man wanted to be a star. Instead, he became a headline no one could believe. Antron Singleton was born in 1976 in East Dallas, Texas. He stood about 6'7" tall and had a deep voice. From an early age, he wrote poetry. He started a rap career in his teens. He joined a group called Cosmic Slop Shop. Their 1998 release briefly made it onto the music charts. In 2000, Singleton was in a car crash that broke his neck. He suffered constant pain afterward. To cope, he began using the hallucinogenic substance PCP. That choice shifted the course of his life. He grew up in Dallas and had support for his art when he was young. Public records say little about his family. After his accident, he moved to Los Angeles. He hoped to break through in the hip-hop scene. His music career was on the rise. Then in April 2002, everything changed. On April 10th, 2002, Singleton was 25. He shared an apartment in South Los Angeles with a 21-year-old roommate, Tanisha Isace. That night, he took her life. Investigators found that he had broken her neck and jaw. Her eye socket was shattered. A sharp tool had cut open her chest so deeply that her right lung was removed and eaten. They also found teeth marks on her face and lungs, and the tool itself lodged near her shoulder blade. Later, they discovered human tissue in Singleton's stomach that did not belong to him. Afterward, he was seen running naked through the streets. He was screaming and covered in red. Witnesses said he was barking and staring at the sky. His defense team said he was in a substance-induced psychotic state. They argued that the PCP binge, combined with possible hallucinations after his accident, had driven him into a break from reality. They claimed he believed the world was ending. In his mind, he thought he needed to find and destroy the devil in his roommate. Singleton pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His lawyer pointed to his horror-themed lyrics as proof that his mind had collapsed. Prosecutors countered that choosing to use the substance did not excuse what he did. They also presented witnesses who said Isace was still alive during the brutal acts against her. In less than an hour, the jury found him responsible for first-degree homicide, intentional harm, and aggravated mayhem. On November 7, 2003, a judge sentenced him to 2 life terms in prison with no chance of release. From behind bars, Singleton later said he felt his legal team let him down. He suggested his own lawyer may have undermined his defense. He claimed both he and his roommate had been given the substance without their knowledge, possibly set up by others. Some family members, including Isace's mother, have voiced doubts about his guilt or about what really happened that night. Throughout all this, Singleton has maintained that he did not fully understand his actions and that forces beyond his control led to the tragedy. Robert John Bardo was born in 1970 at Edwards Air Force Base in California. He was the youngest of 7 siblings. His mother was Japanese and his father served in the U.S. Air Force. The family moved often. In 1983, they settled in Tucson, Arizona. Robert faced harsh treatment from one sibling and was later diagnosed with bipolar disorder. At age 15, he spent a short time in a mental health facility. He left school in 9th grade. Before 1989, he had several run-ins with the law for family harm and public disturbance. Neighbors said his behavior was unpredictable. His downward spiral began years before the fatal act. At first, he became fixated on peace activist Samantha Smith. Next, he turned his attention to pop stars Tiffany and Debbie Gibson. None of these obsessions went far, until he saw Rebecca Schaefer. In 1986, he caught her in a My Sister Sam commercial. He started sending her letters and saved every episode of her sitcom. When one of his fan letters got a reply, he saw it as a personal invitation. He traveled to Los Angeles with flowers and a teddy bear. Studio security turned him away twice. He even had an incident with a sharp tool, but his fixation stayed strong. His obsession grew darker after he saw an intimate scene of hers in a film. He felt betrayed. To him, she had lost her innocence. He paid a private investigator $250 to get her home address. He used state motor vehicle records to find it. On July 18, 1989, 19-year-old Robert put his plan into action. He hid a .357 Magnum, bought by his brother, in his bag. He took a Greyhound bus to Los Angeles. Rebecca, 21, was in West Hollywood. She was waiting for a courier to deliver her audition script for The Godfather Part 3. Around 10:15 a.m., he buzzed her apartment. Rebecca thought it was the courier. She came downstairs and saw him. He showed her a signed photo she'd once sent. She smiled, shook his hand, and asked him to wait while she got ready. He left and sat in a nearby cafe to calm himself. A few minutes later, he came back. He rang her doorbell again. When Rebecca opened the door, she said, "You came back." He felt rejected. He pulled the gun from his bag and fired it at her chest from close range. She cried out, "Why? Why?" her final words. Then she fell. After the shooting, he fled. He dropped a copy of The Catcher in the Rye onto a roof as he ran away. The next day, he was back in Tucson. He wandered onto a busy highway, shouting that he'd shot someone. Police arrested him at once. They found Rebecca's photo in his pocket. He was charged with intentionally ending her life. During the hearing, his lawyers said his serious mental illness drove him. An expert witness spoke about his diagnosis. The prosecutor showed a tape of his own confession. In it, he admitted to sneaking up on Rebecca and hiding the gun before firing. That evidence showed he planned the act. On October 30th, 1991, the judge ruled that Robert was guilty. He received a sentence to spend the rest of his life behind bars without any chance of release.